that I find most worthy of celebrating is the fact that the income tax reduction in this budget is a progressive one, that it reduces the rate for those who were paying 5% in that particular tier. The income tax will be reduced to 4.5%, and for those at the lowest paying tier at 3% down to 2%. That is really progressive income tax relief. And Madam President, this has been a struggle now since 1991. When the income tax was adopted in 1991, unfortunately, it was a flat rate tax, a highly imperfect tax. I was serving in the House of Representatives at the time, along with current Senators John Von Farren, Joan Hartley, and I believe in the House, the votes were present for a more progressive state income tax. And that wasn't true in the Senate at the time. There was at least one vote short. And the only tax that could be adopted was one that Republican Senator Bill Nickerson was willing to vote for. And that was one that would be a flat rate. And in fact, it probably meant a substantial tax cut for many of his constituents, because people may not remember, but at that time, we did have a separate tax rate on capital gains, dividends, and interest, which at the upper end was quite high. So instead of that, for those, the bulk of whose income was in those categories, all of their income was going to be taxed at 4.5%. So I don't know, but there probably should be a statue of Senator Nickerson on the green in Greenwich. I don't know if there is, but certainly he saved his constituents a lot of money over the years. But so ever since then, we have been trying to build more progressivity into the income tax from that starting point of the flat rate of 4.5%. And we have succeeded. Now we have several tiers in the income tax that we have enacted over time, and most people pay a blended rate on their income tax, except for those in the very highest, two highest levels pay the income tax at the stated level from their first dollar of taxable income. But everyone else pays a blended rate. So now we are focusing on the lower reaches of those tiers to provide additional relief, and that is something of great importance, I think. Builds more progressivity into our tax. In an ideal world, I would have liked to have seen the income tax change be revenue neutral by having a slight increase at the higher end for a higher rate on the highest income, or a separate capital gains and dividend income tax to somewhat offset the loss of revenue by providing the progressive change at the lower end. But at least we did get the progressivity built into the lower end. So it is a move in the direction, the 30-year movement to build in more progressivity into our tax. So I think that's been important. Also, Madam President, I think, as mentioned earlier, the fact that we will have the earned income tax credit at 40% is critically important for low-income working people, because all of the money that they receive goes back into the economy. They're all living on tight margins. So what this means is that whatever their federal earned income tax credit is, they will get 40% of that in addition from the state. That was first instituted back in 2011 at 30%. It went down for a while and back up again, and now has hit 40%. And I think that is certainly a good level and provides assistance where it is needed most. And at the federal level, the earned income tax credit has always been broadly supported in a bipartisan way. In addition, Madam President, I think that the fact that we have dealt with the issue of the severe cliff on taxation of pensions by providing an easing of that cliff, I think is very important for many of our seniors. So what we will have, that those who are will have a phase-in or a phase-down of their exemption, rather than having it end abruptly at $75,000 for individuals or $100 for couples, and then having $1 over that income, resulting in taxation of all of one's income from the first dollar. So I think that's also a significant move, that we've been moving incrementally toward shielding more retirement income. And we all know that retired people in general, even if it looks on paper like their income level is fairly comfortable, in many cases they are struggling with health problems, struggling with large copays, struggling with other costs of the aging process. and the lack of earned income. And this is something that we have been moving toward incrementally, and this is another major step this year by providing that assistance in retirement income. On the spending cap, we've had a great deal of discussion about the spending cap. The budget is under the spending cap. And of course, the spending cap, I think, can be viewed from two different perspectives. On the one hand, the spending cap can be seen as really a prudent guardrail to enforce discipline and prevent excessive spending, and I think that is something that I think that many people have applauded for. But on the other hand, the other side of it is that it can mean also that it is a straitjacket that prevents spending to meet real needs, even at a time when resources are available to meet those needs. So I think this budget has elements of both of those perspectives on the spending cap. So, Madam President, I think these are key elements in the budget itself. I think one of the things that's important to mention is the really significant increase in municipal aid, particularly education funding, particularly in the second year of the biennium. We all know that our schools have suffered a crisis since the pandemic. We know that students returning to school after being out or having their years and their education disrupted. There are greater discipline problems with concentration in school, problems with socialization, and all of these need more assistance. We need to be able to reduce the class size, to have more qualified teachers, more professional aides in the classroom to help recover from those disruptions and loss of learning opportunities. So we are putting a lot more money into our K-12 system as we should. In addition, one of the many problems that school systems, regardless of the wealth of the community, have faced over the years is the state's failure to fully reimburse municipalities for the excess costs of special education. And we're making substantial progress in that this year also by putting an additional $25 million each year to support special education. And as we know, municipalities have to spend 4.5 times their per pupil expenditure before the state assistance kicks in. And that's almost impossible to budget for. The town never knows when a family with a child with very expensive care needs is going to move into the district, and that responsibility has to be met. So we will be moving substantially, I think, toward helping to alleviate that burden for towns and having the state assume more of that responsibility by increasing the money for on the excess costs in special ed. In last year's budget, we made a substantial commitment to early childhood preparation, early childhood care, and school preparation. We all know that one of the problems in our system is that so many children come to kindergarten unprepared to be there. The experiences that they have had from birth to 5 years old have not adequately prepared them for school. They enter school, they are behind, sometimes 2 years or more developmentally. They tend to become discouraged. They tend to become defensive. They tend to tune out and then drop out. Teachers are always often say they're able to predict by the time a child is maybe in third grade who's likely to become a truancy problem when a little bit older, and perhaps a disciplinary problem in the juvenile system thereafter. So we addressed that substantially last year with pouring more funds into early childhood education and pre-K programs. And again, this year, Madam President, we're increasing the rates in the Care for Kids system, $14.2 million in fiscal 24, $53 million fiscal 25, to support an 11% annual rate increase for licensed and a 6% annual rate increase for unlicensed Care for Kids providers. That is putting money where it's needed. Also, in terms of school readiness, in child daycare contract, $15.5 million in fiscal 25 to increase the pre-K rate from $8,900 to over $10,500 per child per year to support 9,830 seats. And also, importantly, eliminating the parent fees in birth to 3 for low-income families, $1.5 million in fiscal 24 and 25 to eliminate parent fees for the birth to 3 program that may be a disincentive for having some children enrolled in that program. So we are continuing to target spending where it is needed to assist young children who are often already behind and already at a disadvantage by the time they reach kindergarten. Also, Madam President, we are addressing other needs in terms of expanding Husky health coverage, providing funding of $3 million in fiscal 25 to expand Husky health coverage for children, regardless of immigration status, up to age 15. That's one of the areas where I wish that our budget constraints were not so severe that we could have gone higher on that, and I hope we'll be able to revisit that issue next year. Also, Madam President, the overall increase for nonprofits is, I think, certainly something, but not as much as many of us would have liked to achieve in this budget, because they have been underfunded for many years. During all of our years of budget crisis, going back to 2009 until the last couple of years, every year, in effect, they were shorted in our budget. They provide essential services in the state of Connecticut, in many ways being surrogates for the state of Connecticut, taking on clients that are directed to them by state agencies. And I think that's something that we need to be able to try to revisit next year. We did also increase income eligibility for Husky C, $8.5 million in fiscal 25. That's also an important addition. So overall, I think that there is much here that is important to acknowledge as a significant contribution to the pressing needs of our state. There are some areas where we have fallen short of what an ideal situation would be, but again, that's why we engage every single year in a discussion about what might be done or what might be amended. I want to thank the great work done by Senator Austin. The Appropriations Committee is year in, year out, every year. She puts her heart and soul into this process, probably puts in more hours than most legislators that I can think of. Entirely committed, entirely dedicated, entirely principled. And Senator Fonfara also, who has been the the creative spirit behind our revenue structure for a number of years. In fact, people talk about the guardrails, and I think the most important guardrail was the one that was adopted in 2017 that created the volatility cap, and that was one that Senator Fonfara devised based upon the fact that that was a single element of our income tax that was problematic for us nearly every year, that we were never able to adequately predict how much we were going to take in on the estimates and finals portion of our income tax that accounts for 30% of our income tax revenue. And by setting up the volatility cap, by only allowing us to budget what might be allowed over a several-year average, we've been able to correct that what had otherwise been a roller coaster effect that threw our budgets out of balance. I think the other guardrails that were adopted at that time may or may not be beneficial. I think time will tell on some of those. I wish that we had some ways perhaps of having a little bit more flexibility under the cap. We did carry forward some surplus revenue from fiscal 23 into the next year biennium, and that would not be because it's been already appropriated. It doesn't count under the cap, which we have been able to get an agreement to do somewhat more of that. But in any case, I think that the volatility cap certainly has served us well and will continue to do so. Again, Madam President, I wanted to thank also the House counterparts of Senator Austin, Senator Fonfara, certainly Representative Tony Walker from New Haven, the longtime House Chair, also puts her heart and soul into the process and is a passionate advocate for responsible state budgeting. Representative Maria Horn, a new Chair of Finance, Revenue, and Bonding, has brought her intelligence and expertise to bear there as well. Wanted to thank our Majority Leader, Senator Duff, who as always is a voice of reason and also principled advocacy in this process. Senator Kelly and his caucus for their participation. The Speaker and Majority Leader and Minority Leader in the House. And want to thank the administration also for their level of engagement and accessibility in all of this process with Johnny Dock and Jeff Beckham as well, and want to thank you, Madam President, for your steadfastness in all of this process as well. So, Madam President, I think that we saw the vote in the House earlier this morning of 139 to 12, and I would hope that we would have a vote of similar proportions here in the Senate on this consensus budget. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator.